Welcome to the Baking Book Club, a space where we break down and we discuss whatever I'm reading at the moment while baking a delicious sweet treat. Today's little treat I'll be baking alongside this commentary are pina colada cupcakes. Since the main character in this book is Puerto Rican, I found out recently that pina coladas originated from Puerto Rico, so the more you know. If you want to make them for yourself, I will have the recipe linked below if I'm able to yet, and if not, the recipe is from Salima's Kitchen. Today we're going to be talking all about With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. The main character in this novel is named Emoni, and she had a baby as a freshman in high school. She is 17 now and lives with her daughter and her abuela. The book centers around Emoni trying to balance her responsibilities to her daughter and abuela alongside schooling and her dream of becoming a chef. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stick around because we are about to dive in. The book starts on Imani's first day of senior year and her daughter's first day of daycare. Emoni spends a lot of time describing how she's doing her daughter's hair for school in clean braids, which had me wondering if hairstyles and hair care in general would be a recurring theme throughout the book. And there's really not any more related instances revolving hair that come up, at least none that I could personally pick up on, but if you read this book and notice something, please let me know. We learn that Imani's daughter's name is Emma, and she chose that for a specific reason. Emoni and her family are not white. They are Afro-Puerto Rican. She doesn't want people to make assumptions based on her daughter's name like she has personally experienced in her life, especially with regard to jobs and school applications. Emoni wants opportunities to greet her daughter easier than she has experienced. So in a way, she has to sacrifice some of her daughter's connection to herself and her heritage as a way to protect her. And Emoni is so young herself, there is only so much she can do realistically for her daughter that she feels will give her a leg up in life, and choosing her name is one of them. Emoni also doesn't seem to like her own name that much. She compares it spoken aloud to, quote, silverware sharp sounds, while she says her daughter's name is soft, rolling off the tongue like a half-dreamed murmur. While I was reading the book, I looked up where the origins of both Emoni and Emma come from, just as like a little fun fact, I guess. And Emoni is a variant of the name Imani. She spells it with an E, but the original name spells it with an I, which has origins from the Swahili language, a popular language spoken around East Africa, whereas the name Emma is thought to have German origins. Imani's perception of her name versus her daughter's name is the first point in the book where we see that she has kind of a complicated relationship with her family history and its culture, just where she comes from. This complexity is further explored through her relationships with her family, specifically with her abuela and her father Julio. We as readers won't get acquainted with him for a while, and his absence is part of the reason for Imani's confusion. She also rarely refers to her daughter as her birth name, Emma. Instead, she calls her baby girl. There is a little bit of discourse around the name Emoni gives her daughter throughout the book. Most of it comes from the father of her child's mother, but we will talk about her a little bit later on. But I think for Emoni, Emma is more of a professional and world-facing name, like a stage name of sorts, and baby girl is informal and it's more intimate. It's a name for the family and anyone close to Emoni to use. Some other important people in her life are her best friend Angelica, who is in a relationship with another girl named Laura, and also the father of her child named Tyrone. He and Emoni seem to be fine at co-parenting, but their relationship when they were together was definitely toxic, and that impacts Imani's relationship with men later on in the book. She is very walled off and distrustful of any guy who might show interest in her. The central theme of this book is around food and cooking. The role of food in this story is what helps Emoni connect with her multiple identities, which also helps her reconnect with herself as an individual outside of being a mother. From a young age, Emoni has shown interest in the kitchen and how powerful a bite of delicious food could be. She says, quote, "At the age of 4, I learned someone could cry from a happy memory. She says also, my Aunt Sarah says it's in our blood, an innate need to tell a story through food. When Abuela tastes the very first meal Emoni ever makes on her own, she gets emotional from a memory of her home back in Puerto Rico. It is clear pretty early on that Emoni has a gift, but she seems hesitant to pursue that further outside of her home kitchen. One of Emoni's biggest supporters at school is her homeroom teacher, Miss Fuentes. She was instrumental in advocating for Emoni during her pregnancy and helped her stay on track with her education. Now she is also advocating for Emoni to pursue higher education after graduating high school in the upcoming spring. Emoni isn't so sure that is the right path for her though, for many reasons that reveal themselves throughout the story. And deciding what her plans are after high school is the other main thing that she grapples with alongside deepening her relationship with her culture. Emoni's pregnancy brought a lot of attention to her, a lot of judgmental, negative attention from people at school and others in her hometown. Not just because she was a young mother, but because she was a young mother of color. People made a lot of assumptions about her that were untrue. That's probably part of the reason she was so adamant about naming her daughter Emma. Unfortunately, it's sort of a shield to block some of those assumptions right off the bat. At the beginning of the school year, Emoni finds out that a new student is joining her homeroom. Also, there are some new elective courses being offered, one of which is a Spain-themed culinary arts class. The only problem is that this is senior year and Emoni would have to give up her only study hall to take the class, and she already has so many responsibilities outside of schoolwork, like her fast food job and caring for her daughter. As Angelica is trying to convince Emoni to take the course, all she can think of are ways to make the cafeteria sandwich she's eating taste better. Food and cooking is a means of comfort for Emoni. It gives her a sense of control and autonomy at a point in her life where she feels like she has to live for others first. Like her daughter and her abuela, who she feels a responsibility to care for as well because she has helped raise her and is now also helping care for her daughter. When Emoni gets home from school, she greets her daughter the way abuela greets her, and there's also a chapter where Emoni reads Emma to sleep and then abuela ends up reading Emoni to sleep. It serves as a nice reminder to the reader and to Emoni that she's still just a kid too. She and Abuela have a conversation about the culinary class while they prepare dinner. Abuela says something along the lines of, "You wanted to go to culinary school once, didn't you?" A little late for that though. Abuela isn't necessarily against her taking the class, but she worries about it taking away from Emoni's other responsibilities. And she's worried about how Emoni could afford the week-long trip to Spain that also comes with the class. The high school that Emoni goes to is a charter school that she had to apply to a lottery to get into. She originally wanted to apply to a different school that had a nicer culinary arts program, but her counselor didn't think that she had the grades to get in. Cooking and culinary arts have always been in the back of Emoni's mind, and this class might be her only opportunity to try again. The new guy eventually shows up to homeroom and his name is Malachi. Emoni makes such a point to tell us how much she isn't interested in him that it is clear that she is interested. And Emoni does decide to take the culinary arts class after all. We also learn a little bit more about Tyrone here. Emoni suggests that he has a bit of an ego. Part of the reason they even dated was because she ignored him at a party. He probably felt the need to prove that he could get anyone he wanted to like him. So he did whatever he needed to do to get Emoni, even if he didn't necessarily mean it. And that's exactly what happened. Emoni dated him because that was the first time she felt chosen, and those insecurities led to incidents that created Emma. And it wasn't an enjoyable experience at all for her. It didn't last long at all. She went home and cooked caramelized plantains afterward. And now whenever she cooks that dish for other people, they always cry when they eat it. Emoni took that experience and coped with it by transmuting that energy and her feelings into the food she made. And now that energy lingers each time she makes it. That's part of what makes her cooking so powerful is that it's so personal and emotional for her. You can literally taste it. It's like the difference in taste between someone making a meal just because they need to eat to survive, and someone taking their time and care to craft a dish that is truly delicious. Tyrone's family is more well off than Emoni's is. They live in a nicer part of town, they have a nice car, etc. For most of Emma's life, they didn't believe that their son was really her father, assuming that someone in Emoni's situation must have lots of guys around. They treat Emoni differently in this situation, even though both her and Tyrone played a role. And I would argue that Tyrone had a much bigger hand in this situation. He's older than Emoni, and he's the first person she was ever with, and he essentially manipulated her into a no-strings-attached relationship for a while. But all his parents see is a poor, young, and pregnant girl. They don't acknowledge any other way she could have found herself in this position if it threatens their biases and the way that they wish to view their son. Something else that is interesting to note here is that Tyrone's mother expects Emma to appear a certain way during her scheduled visits. She has to wear certain clothes and her hair has to be done a certain way. She has to look clean, is how Emoni describes it. It reminds me of at the beginning of the novel when Emoni spent basically an hour doing and redoing Emma's braids for her first day of daycare, and also her reasoning for choosing the name Emma in the first place. Even though the daycare probably doesn't have the same expectations, Emoni is constantly aware of how her and her daughter may be perceived and how that can impact them. It is a lot of pressure to put on a 17-year-old girl. And in this situation again, Emoni deals with it by cooking after Tyrone takes her daughter for the weekend. Emma is screaming and crying because this is a transition for her too, to be away from Emoni and Abuela for an extended period of time. And then Emoni's lack of relationship with her mother impacts her relationship with her daughter and her own motherhood journey. Her mom died when she was young, so she doesn't have any memories of her really. Abuela was the one that raised her, but that is her dad's mom, so she doesn't have a lot of memories to share with Emoni either. She talks to her mother's sister sometimes, Aunt Sarah, and she shares family recipes that Emoni likes to make. In a way, cooking in those recipes is the only way that she can connect with her mother. Not just making the recipes, but even down to the way that they're written down. She says that she cooks the way I do, no actual measurements, just ingredients and partial directions, in reference to Aunt Sarah's recipes that she passes down. And when you make a recipe so many times, when it gets passed down by generations, you don't always need directions. It's like the power to make that dish is already within you, and as you make it, you're guided by the ghostly hands of all your ancestors who made it before you, instead of written down words. We also learned that Emoni's father abandoned her shortly after she was born and shortly after her mother died to go back to Puerto Rico. He left Emoni with Abuela and never returned, basically. Except now that she's older, he does come to visit once a year in the summertime. Emoni doesn't seem to be too upset about that at first. She's got a lot of repressed emotions about it, especially now that she has become a parent herself. She is grateful for her Abuela though. Now that Abuela is getting older and her health is starting to weaken, Emoni feels a responsibility to care for her too, on top of herself and her daughter, which is a lot to carry, but they really don't have anyone else besides each other, or so Emoni thinks. Emoni goes to the first day of her cooking class, and the new student Malachi is there too. And the teacher seems to be pretty strict about respecting food and the kitchen, but he's equally as serious about cooking as an art form, and I think Emoni likes that. This cooking class is definitely a different experience than cooking at home, and she will learn that quickly. At home, food is a way that she can connect with her roots above all else. Abuela didn't raise Emoni speaking much Spanish, and because she is mixed race, all of those sort of together impact how she views herself. People who aren't from her area find her speech confusing. They question her broken Spanish speaking, and even Malachi paused his flirting to question her blackness because of her Puerto Rican last name. She doesn't feel entirely welcome from either side of who she is. Because she is a blend of both, she doesn't feel like she is enough of either, neither of her identities to really stand in them. She doesn't want to feel that way, of course, but it is projected onto her by people who don't understand, by other people in her community. It's like people forget that Afro-Caribbeans exist for some reason. So food isn't just about connecting with her immediate family, it's also about fusing and connecting to all of her history. It helps solidify Emoni's identity. And baby girl is young now, but that's something that she can pass on to her daughter as well to keep that heritage alive and to celebrate it. In class, Emoni is getting quizzed on some of the details and safety related sides of working in a kitchen, and she really struggles to see the point in this, feeling like it's a waste of time. As she says in this quote, "I didn't pay attention to the temperature guide. Chicken is done when it's done." Emoni is struggling with the more technical parts of her culinary class. Her family recipes and her cooking are much more intuitively driven than what is required in a professional kitchen. She feels a little insecure about this because cooking is kind of the thing that she's known for being good at, but in class it doesn't always feel that way. Finally, they do start chefing it up though. Emoni makes her first dish in her culinary class. It is a chocolate pudding, but she does stray from the recipe, and she adds some smoked paprika on top. Her teacher says it does taste good, but it can be seen as disrespectful to modify someone's dish without running it by them first. During lunch, Emoni and Angelica are talking about colleges to apply to. Angelica is really artsy and into graphic design. She wants to apply to all of the big schools. Emoni supports her and believes in her ability, but struggles to do the same for herself. She just cannot imagine how she could manage going to college and working and also taking care of her daughter. Angelica knows how much Emoni has to offer though, and she wishes Emoni could see that in herself. On top of all of this, Emoni learns that she only has a couple of months left to raise $800 for her Spain trip for her class. So now it feels even more impossible than before. Eventually, Malachi learns that Emoni has a daughter, and to her surprise, he is still interested in her. He even invites her out for ice cream. Even though in the moment she put on a tough exterior when he asks, I don't think that she was expecting him to want to associate with her anymore, and especially not in a kind of flirty way. So she gets home from that outing, and Abuela has to go to a doctor's appointment, which she has been going to a lot of lately, and Emoni is a little bit worried about that in the back of her mind. Also, Imani's father has been calling her, but she hasn't been answering. She feels very conflicted about him. Back in Puerto Rico, he is sort of a star and a pillar for serving his community, but why does he not extend that same care and compassion to his family, to Emoni? She says, quote, "When we hang up, neither one of us says I love you. Neither one of us says I miss you. Neither one of us says, just come and live here with me. He doesn't say I'm sorry for leaving, and I don't say I'm so angry you left." Imani's homeroom teacher, Miss Fuentes, is trying to convince her to apply to at least a couple of colleges, that way she has options. Emoni is not sure that college is for her, and it's not just because of her daughter. It's also because she doesn't want to put more onto Abuela's shoulders when she's already done so much to raise Emoni and also to help with Emma so far. And I also think Emoni doesn't really believe in herself. It is hard for her to see a future for herself that includes following her dreams, because she has so many people relying on her, and the only other role model in her life that she's had for following your dreams is her father, who abandoned her to go and live his best life in Puerto Rico. I think subconsciously, Emoni worries that pursuing culinary arts in college will hurt her daughter in the same ways that she feels hurt by her father. And because she is so young, she does not fully understand that to be a good parent, one who is able to best support their children and loved ones, you have to put yourself first sometimes. Otherwise, you'll never have your full self to give. It's just like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Emoni is giving so much of herself to others in her life, and her cup is nearing empty. And also, the only kind of paternal figure she's had in her life consistently is her abuela, who raised her father and then had to give up so much of her autonomy to raise Emoni, because she wasn't really given a choice. And I'm sure witnessing that also influenced her parenting style and outlook on parenting in general, as something that is selfless to a fault. Of course, pouring into yourself is easier said than done, especially in Imani's shoes, which is shown through her struggles and internalization of the stigmas and stereotypes that come along with being a young mother, especially a young mother of color. It's going to be hard for her, and not everyone wants her to succeed, but she does have people like Angelica and Miss Fuentes that see something special in her and believe it's worth fighting for, no matter how tough things can get. And they are rooting for her to see that in herself as well. It's interesting too because even though she and Angelica come from similar backgrounds, she recognizes her friend's talent and says all the time how she knows that Angelica will be famous and get places one day, but she doesn't extend that same admiration toward her. So Emoni is back in culinary class and she prepares a dish differently than the directions yet again in her class. So Emoni is back in culinary class for another day and she prepares a dish differently than the directions yet again. And the chef makes her throw her dish away in front of everyone, even though it does taste amazing. This really hurts Emoni and she argues with the chef about it. I think Emoni might be scared to actually follow the rules in her class. She might be scared to follow the directions exactly because that's out of her comfort zone, and then she would be trying, like really trying. And applying herself to this class marks the difference between a passion that she enjoys and a future that she is taking seriously. I think also because she is a mother now, she doesn't see herself as the kid or the student anymore, even though she is one. And I think that's also why we see her butt heads with the culinary arts chef and also her homeroom teacher at times when they're just trying to do their job of being an educator and giving advice. Which is ironic because the habit of brushing off their wisdom is childish and short-sighted. Emoni skips the rest of her classes to go pick up baby girl from daycare because she has just had enough, and Abuela meets her there. She doesn't question why Emoni is not in school at this hour. Instead, she says, "In a couple of months, you'll be an adult. I trust you with that child. I should trust you with yourself." It's odd because when people at school treat her like a child, Emoni doesn't like it. But when Abuela treats her like an adult, she also doesn't like it either. Because she was almost upset in that moment that Abuela didn't question her more or reprimand her. She does still want help and guidance, but maybe she just feels like she can't ask for it anymore because of her situation. Emoni continues the rest of the week skipping culinary arts class, and a few days later Malachi calls to check in on her as she is preparing a fancy meal for Angelica and her girlfriend's anniversary. The last time that her and Malachi saw one another, it was at the fast food place that Emoni works at, and he was with another girl that Emoni calls Pretty Leslie, and Pretty Leslie had no problem rubbing it in Imani's face that she was out with him and not her. Malachi is also calling to apologize for Leslie's behavior, and he ends up coming over to help Emoni with the fancy dinner. You know, since he's in the culinary class too, he might have picked up on a few things. That's how Emoni is rationalizing it, at least. Abuela makes a comment in that moment about bringing more boys home, and that upsets Emoni. I think when Abuela says stuff to Emoni that can be read as a little bit judgmental, it impacts her more because she actually respects and cares about Abuela. She doesn't want Abuela to think that she is the kind of girl that everyone else seems to think that she is. While cooking with Malachi, Emoni says, quote, "I feel those first crush butterflies that I never thought I'd feel again," which I know sounds silly for a 17-year-old to say, but some days I don't feel like a 17-year-old at all. Her hanging out with Malachi and developing a crush on him is a reminder to her that she is still young, even though she feels like she has so much to carry already. Part of her wants to embrace that feeling, but also part of her fears it because of the responsibilities that she has. It is a parallel to her relationship with culinary arts class and college, sort of. Eventually, Tyrone gets word about Malachi coming over and he calls Emoni and he's not very happy. He accuses her of bringing guys around Emma and also insinuates that she and Malachi must have been hooking up, which I feel like is a projection. This shakes Emoni, and so to take her mind off things, Abuela takes her and her daughter to a fancy cafe where she reveals that she knows that Emoni is skipping culinary class specifically. She won't tell Emoni what to do, but she does say, "I hope you don't sell yourself short." As Emoni enjoys her meal, she tastes something that she doesn't recognize in it, so the chef comes over and explains the dish to her, saying that she added added orange zest. I mention oranges specifically because they will come up again later as a little subtle motif. Emoni is kind of starstruck at first by meeting a real-life chef. Then she feels kind of embarrassed because she learns that this chef is actually friends with her culinary arts instructor, and she hasn't been to that class in almost 2 weeks at this point. The chef compliments Emoni's taste buds and says that if she keeps learning, she has the potential to be a great chef too. And this really means a lot to Emoni. Enough so that she does finally go back to class and she apologizes to her teacher. And instead of being upset with her, he asks her to lead the fundraising efforts for their trip to Spain. Emoni is surprised that he also sees potential in her. He sees a future in her that isn't working at a fast food burger joint to scrape by for herself and her daughter. Both of these chefs do, and I think that's why she actually is hearing them, even though she has heard similar sentiments from other people in her life, like Miss Fuentes and Angelica, and even Abuela at times. Because these people are actually doing what she dreams of doing, so their words carry more weight. She respects their opinion of her more because of their experience and authority in cooking. Before she took that little break, Emoni was kind of a loner in the cooking class, but now she helps prepare her dishes in a team with some other students. Learning how to step back and let other people, or even just the written down recipe lead, is important for her growth as a cook and as a character. She's beginning to learn that it's okay to rely on others for support. Not just that it's okay, but it's necessary. And your community has your back just as much as you have theirs. And that support has been there all along. She just needed to embrace it. Later on, Tyrone comes over and Emoni attempts to have a conversation with him about how upset he got about the whole Malachi situation. He brings girls around their daughter all the time, but when Emoni has a guy friend come over that doesn't even meet Emma, then there seems to be a problem all of a sudden. And I think that problem has less to do with concern for Emma and more to do with controlling and keeping tabs on Emoni. It's one of the many double standards for mothers versus fathers the book points out through her relationship with Tyrone and through her relationship with her father. And Emoni feels it worse because she is so young. Tyrone leaves and Emoni asks Abuela if she can help watch Emma if she's able to go for Spain for a week. Abuela was never able to travel herself and she doesn't want this opportunity to pass her granddaughter by either. Abuela as a character is interesting to me because she seems to be having this internal conflict throughout a lot of the novel about her role in Emoni's life now that she is a mother. There are some moments, like when Emoni is talking about going to Spain, where Abuela assures her she'll make sure that baby girl's taken care of, and she doesn't want Emoni to experience the same. But then we get other comments from her that almost seem to put Emoni in a box, like when Malachi came over to help cook, and she was making insinuations about boys coming over. Or even near the beginning of the novel when she said to Emoni, "You wanted to go to culinary school once, didn't you? A little late for that now." Emoni herself describes her grandmother with the quote, "Abuela walks through the world with her palms up. She takes what's given to her in stride and never gives up or cries." This really paints Abuela as passive, as someone who is a passenger in their own life. But it negates that Abuela was put in a lot of difficult situations, ones that in her eyes hardly gave her a choice. I mean, what was she realistically supposed to do? Just abandon Emoni like her son did? And after her husband died, she had to take sewing jobs in order to afford to take care of herself. Eventually, a workplace incident messed up one of her hands, making her unemployable. You have to be the kind of person that makes the most out of what you've got when you're constantly put in situations like that. Lingering and lamenting on the what-ifs are expensive when you're in the moment. Abuela had to sort of harden herself in that way in order to survive, which did come at the cost of her identity outside of someone's caretaker. It's complicated to be in that situation personally, and it's complicated to be raised by someone like that. As Emoni comes into her own, it also frees up space for Abuela to take up. This allows them each room to breathe and room to process. To help raise money for Spain, Emoni organizes a system where her classmates make extra of the dish that they're learning and sell plates of it to other students and teachers. It seems popular so far, but Emoni is still worried about meeting their goal. She doesn't want to let everyone down, and she doesn't want to let herself down either. They are also going to cook for the school's winter dinner event in December. Emoni is in charge of creating the menu, and she enjoys rising to the challenge. It makes her feel hopeful and productive, and I think it allows for more agency over her time, even though she barely has any left with all her responsibilities. Oh, and they actually have to raise $8,000 in total, and then that would be $800 per person. So winter dinner was a success, thankfully, and each student will now only owe about $275 to take the Spain trip. So a lot less than $800, but that is still more money than Emoni can spare personally. So she feels mixed emotions at this moment, pride that she was able to organize any of this at all, and sadness that she still may not be able to go. The chef from the cafe came to the dinner and personally sought out Emoni to tell her how good her dishes were. She also reveals that Imani's culinary teacher told her how talented at cooking Emoni was, and she is beaming. After the dinner ends, Emoni scoops baby girl up in her arms and says, "I don't know how I'll get the rest of this money, but I know that I did more for this single day than I ever thought possible, and that is something to be proud of." I liked this moment. Instead of baby girl being the reason that she can't do things, now she's becoming Imani's inspiration to pursue the dreams that she didn't think were possible. And she's also becoming someone to share her successes with. The teachers at Imani's school loved the lunches that the culinary students made so much that it's going to start back up again the next semester. So Emoni went from considering dropping out of the course to fundraising thousands of dollars and starting a whole new program at school. It was exhausting and it was hard work, but she did it, and she deserves to be proud of herself. But missing out on Spain is stopping her from fully reveling in this. Back at school, Malachi invites Emoni to an ice skating show, even going as far as to secure tickets for Angelica, Abuela, and baby girl so that Emoni feels comfortable going and doing something fun for herself. And to ensure that there's no romantic strings attached, which in my opinion is more romantic of an act than framing it as a date would have been. Imani's relationship with Malachi is different than with Tyrone. Tyrone said a bunch of stuff he didn't always mean just to sweet talk her. Malachi is clear about his intentions and his feelings through his actions. And regardless of how intense his feelings may be, he is letting Emoni set the pace for whatever their relationship ends up being. Emoni has said in multiple ways that she feels more like an adult than a kid at this point. But is she ready for a mature relationship? Is she adult enough to trust Malachi in spite of her fears? Thankfully, the day that the Spain trip money is due, Emoni receives an email from her aunt Sarah saying that she and the rest of her family on her mom's side pooled their money together and is sending her $300 to use toward her trip. So yay, Emoni gets to go, and I know it was special to be able to have that connection with her mom too, not just being able to go to Spain, but using iterations of her recipes for the winter dinner fundraiser meals as well. Even though her mom isn't physically there, she still is a means of support to Emoni that she can lean on during this time. Everyone but Abuela goes to the ice show. Abuela's got other top secret plans that we will get into later. But Emoni didn't tell Tyrone about this outing and about taking Emma with her, so I'm sure he will find out eventually, and we will see how that goes. Malachi walks Emoni back to her house after the show, and all she can think about is how he has his whole life planned out with hopes of becoming a doctor one day, and she has no idea what the future holds for her. This leads to her finally initiating the "what are we" conversation, which she is a big ball of nerves for, and Malachi is very chill about. He's got a very much like let's just enjoy the moment and figure things out whenever they need to be figured out kind of attitude, which I think is exactly the kind of perspective Emoni needs right now. So back at school one day, Emoni gets caught with her phone out and a security guard takes it, and I have personal beef with a security guard because I understand keeping the phone for the rest of the school day, but he keeps it overnight locked away in the building, and I feel like that has to be illegal because it's personal property, right? And also Emoni is a mother. She has responsibilities to tend to, and she needs her phone so the people watching baby girl can contact her if they need to. And she tried to explain this to the security guard, but he just really did not care at all. Also, it's so dangerous to let a young girl go outside of school property without a phone. Like, what if something happened to her and she had no way to call for help or no way for someone to track where she was? I understand that school has certain rules, but those rules should only apply during school hours. This part just really annoyed me. Case in point, baby girl comes down with a fever at daycare and they cannot reach Emoni to let her know. They end up getting a hold of Tyrone, who gets his mother to pick her up, and when she lets Emoni know all of this, she's not happy at all. She's very annoyed and very judgmental. And yet, she's the one that's picking baby girl up, not her son, but apparently Emoni is the irresponsible one. I don't know. Tyrone's mom also threatens to bring this up in court if Tyrone ever decides he wants a legal custody agreement instead of the informal one that they have going on now. As a reaction to this, Emoni asks, why am I accused of being the irresponsible one, but he's so often excused from having to be as much of a father as I am a mother. There's just such a double standard and an attitude from this woman to hold when your son only has to be present as a parent for like 48 hours every other week. Abuela finally gets home from another doctor's appointment, and Emoni breaks down in tears telling her about everything that happened. This is when Abuela reveals that she hasn't been actually going to doctor's appointments. She just wanted time out of the house by herself to feel like herself again. Emoni is kind of angry about this at the moment, but I think those feelings are more related to just all of the hectic events of the day rather than to Abuela rediscovering herself. But all of this coming to a head in one moment definitely creates some tension between the two. It's several days later now, and Emoni asks for the days off for her Spain trip at her job, and her manager is so annoying, maybe even more annoying than that security guard. But he is essentially doing this thing where he's not going to fire her, but he's just going to keep scheduling her less and less until she's gone, basically. So he's kind of a prick, and he enjoys exercising his power dynamics of being a manager over all of the employees, but also Emoni especially. This happening as she's entering the second half of her senior year is definitely complicating her decision between pursuing college or going straight into whatever job she can find after she graduates. Her abuela and baby girl cannot afford for Emoni to not be working, and I just feel so bad for her, and it angers me that people like Tyrone's parents choose to further punish and threaten Emoni instead of supporting her like they can afford to do. They could be her community too, but they don't see her as the mother of their grandchild first. They see her as the girl their son knocked up first. The girl from the poorer side of town, the girl who probably gets around, and the girl who chooses to neglect her daughter by ignoring phone calls. Emoni could be doing everything right, and it still wouldn't be enough for them. And it sucks that the people who care about Emoni the most have the least physically and monetarily to give, like Abuela and Angelica and even her culinary teacher. He offered to help pay for her Spain trip, but that was a stressful situation for him because he doesn't have extra money laying around to help her pay for this. And yet he was still determined to make it work somehow before, Aunt Sarah came in clutch. But because at some level, all of these people understand that if one of them succeeds, then they all succeed. And that really brings them together. And if one of them needs help, then they do everything in their power to help them. Emoni might be connected to Tyrone and his family by blood now, but that does not necessarily make a true community. And all of the other people in Emoni's life prove this time and time again. One weekend, Abuela is out having her me time and Tyrone has baby girl, so Emoni is all alone, and she decides to channel all her feelings about Malachi, Tyrone's parents, Abuela, and her uncertain future into making lasagna. Resuming to her usual food as comfort and connection mentality after that got a little bit deconstructed as a result of her culinary class experience. And now it's finally time to go to Spain. Pretty Leslie ends up being roommates with Emoni. How convenient. And she's the girl that also has a crush on Malachi and tries to constantly embarrass Emoni around him, if you didn't remember. This is actually the first time that Emoni has been anywhere outside of her hometown. She hasn't even been to Puerto Rico before to visit her father, so it's definitely a big moment for her character for many reasons, as we will come to discover. Each of the students are mentoring a chef during the week, and Emoni's chef is named Amadi. She specializes in Spanish North African fusion cuisine. Even her mentoring chef recognizes her talent in the kitchen. The first meal that she cooks is seasoned chicken with a spice blend from her Aunt Sarah. Even her food here gives the guests at the restaurant memory flashbacks. And Amadi says to Emoni, if you don't want to call it magic, fine, you have a gift, and it's probably changed the lives of people around you. When you cook, you are giving people a gift. Remember that. When she gets back to her host home, she and Pretty Leslie have a little bit of a heart-to-heart for the first time. They are more similar than Emoni first assumed, which is ironic considering how many times throughout the novel she tells us how much she hates when people make assumptions about her. This is another way that Emoni thinks she is maybe more grown than she actually is, just because she has a kid now. Having a child young forces you to be more mature in certain ways, but it's not a fast track into adulthood. It doesn't mean you just get to skip out over the rest of your adolescent growth and naivety. With or without a kid, your brain still isn't completely developed yet, and that is what makes having a kid so young even harder, because you have to make adult decisions without an adult brain. Emoni is doing a great job given her circumstances, but situations like this with Pretty Leslie are a reminder that she's not just helping baby girl grow up, she still has growing up to do by herself. Pretty Leslie does not have an easy home life either. She's the first person in her family to graduate high school, and like Emoni, she is not quite sure what she wants to do or who she wants to be, but she knows it's going to be big and important. It has to be. There is probably a lot of pressure on her to really make something of herself, being the one in her family to achieve so many firsts. And Emoni also feels a similar pressure to defy odds and provide a good life for herself and her family. The next day, the students get some free time to go and explore the city, and they end up on a tour of a cathedral built to honor Christopher Columbus. Emoni has some unexpected feelings come up while she's in this church. She says, quote, "All this gold they used to honor him, gold they got back from our island in the first place, and hardly anyone remembers the enslaved people who dug through the rivers for that gold, who were there before he arrived, whose descendants are still there now." Emoni opens this chapter with a childhood memory of her playing the game Mancala. She would hold the glass stones up to the light and admire them, feeling rich in the beauty that she held. Now she's in an intricately decorated cathedral where she's supposed to feel overcome with glamour and awe, and yet she feels disgusted because she sees the ugly truth, the violent history behind this shrine. She sees through it like those cheap glass beads from her youth that are ultimately more meaningful and desirable to her because they aren't covered up in anything. They are what they are. They're not trying to hide anything sinister. They're connected to a real and precious memory, not one that has been sanitized and disconnected from the truth. And yet, whether she likes it or not, those whitewashed stories from places like Spain are forever tied to her history as a Puerto Rican. They feed into the relationship she has with Puerto Rico, and they bleed into the assumptions that people make about her that she is so adamantly against. Since this is the first time that Emoni's ever been away from home, this is the first time she's ever been face to face with that, with the way that other places portray her people, how they portray her. Her love for food and cooking is a way to reclaim that, of course, especially what she is chefing up now that she's in Spain. She's sort of leaving her imprint there via her food. Perhaps that is a way to not rewrite history, but to start a new chapter, one that recognizes and celebrates other cultures instead of stripping and conquesting them. I also think her relationship with Malachi ties into this too. When Emoni was ruminating on Columbus and his impacts on Puerto Ricans, how many lives were changed or lost as a result, how many Puerto Rican families were torn apart and dissolved, how many people there were that no longer knew life or love without struggle and hardship. And Malachi is so easy. He's so straightforward and patient and calm and considerate, just in general, but especially with Emoni. She is an amalgamation of so many complex histories, and he doesn't mind. He loves her for all that she is. Their next tour stop builds off of this idea as well. It's a castle built during the time of the Muslim conquest of Spain. And Emoni describes this one differently than she did the cathedral. She says, quote, "This is a place where two worlds collided, beautiful because of the struggle to create it, holy because of the belief people had in it. A home, a masterpiece of art, a mixture of different cultures." This castle is different from the cathedral. The cathedral was hiding part of its history, a big part of it, and this castle is a true blend of all the people who participated in its existence. Its authenticity, regardless of the complexity of its past, is what makes it truly alluring. And this is where Malachi and Emoni decide to go on another ice cream date. The setting is important here because it reflects a turning point for Emoni. Malachi has always seen the beauty in all parts of her. Now Emoni is beginning to see it in herself. She is the one that asks him out, and she makes sure that he knows it's an actual date this time. She asked him out specifically in the castle's garden, and I want to talk about the description here a little bit. I thought it was nice. She said, "We entered a rose garden, a twisty maze that has big orange trees hanging over the bushes. A plaque near the entrance says that a Muslim emperor built it for his wife, and I wonder how many other Black Puerto Rican Philly teens have laughed in this orange tree garden built for a queen. I like the orange tree references here. There are several orange mentions in the scene and throughout the Spain trip, and they're not lost on me. I assume they are mentioned as a callback to when Emoni and Abuela went to that cafe and she tried that dish with the orange zest. That was the first little glimmer of self-belief we saw in her, that she could really make something of herself. The compliment from the chef was really important for her. On their way to the ice cream shop, Emoni goes in for a kiss but is interrupted by a pickpocketer. Malachi is able to get her purse back, but it definitely changes the vibes. It's still an emotional moment and they do finally kiss. Then they venture into a bar where they begin to have an honest conversation about expectations for whatever it is that they've got going on here. She remembers how nice Tyrone was to her before he felt comfortable enough to give up the act. She wants to fully trust Malachi, but part of her is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. She is waiting to be disappointed. Some of her other classmates are there celebrating their college admissions acceptances, or drowning in their sorrows of rejection. Pretty Leslie is one of those that seems to be in a sour mood, and she's taking it out on Emoni. But still, Emoni helps her stumble back home because Leslie is pretty drunk, and at the end of the day, she is a mom. Leslie wakes up the next morning with little recollection of the night before, but Emoni has no problem reminding her of all the nasty things she said. They have another heart-to-heart where they both admit that they assumed the other had this perfect life that they were jealous of, but in reality, they were both fighting just as many silent battles to be where they are today. So it's finally the last day in Spain, and Chef Amadi says to Emoni that after she finishes up her schooling, she is always welcome to come back here to work in her kitchen. That would be Imani's dream, but what about baby girl and Abuela? I think this trip to Spain was a real coming of age moment for Emoni. It gave her much to enjoy and to savor, but it also gave her just as much to think about when it comes to her future with cooking and Malachi and home. Now that she's home, Emoni finally checks her own college application statuses, and she has been accepted into Drexel, a school with a culinary arts program. It's close to home, and that's important too for her, and this is a big emotional moment, not just for Emoni, but for the whole household. I mean, Abuela was in tears and full of pride that her granddaughter was getting that opportunity to go to school. I was getting emotional too. I know these are just fictional characters, but this scenario is so real for so many people, and I'm just so proud of Emoni for even trying when before she thought she was going to have to work at that burger place for the rest of her life. Still, Emoni isn't sure if she will accept the offer. She's worried about not being able to help Abuela with the bills, and she says that she's not good at school, but I think she's using that as an excuse. This is when Abuela reveals that she's secretly been seeing someone she met at her doctor's office. She loves him because he makes her feel like Gloria, not just Abuela. Emoni has been so worried about how spreading her wings will impact others in her life, but she never considered that her hesitation was also stopping someone else from entering a new phase of life. And Abuela is worried about becoming more serious with this guy because she always wants to be there for her girls. She taught Emoni a lot about sacrifice and selflessness. Now it is time to teach her about chasing your desires. Tyrone comes over and Emoni reveals that she and Malachi are dating. Emoni also tells Tyrone about how she got accepted into school, and she also reveals that she and Malachi are officially dating now. He doesn't love that, but he will deal with it for Emma's sake. And he also shares that he got a new job and an apartment recently, so he wants to help out more monetarily with Emma. And he also wants to have more time together with her, which is a big change for Emoni that she's going to need some time to process. It's graduation day now at last, and Imani's father surprises her with a visit. She offers to make him something to eat, but he declines. Every time he eats Imani's food, he's reminded of a memory of her mother. This is the first time they've had a conversation about Imani's mother, and I do wish this interaction was longer so we could have learned a little bit more about his relationship with her, but I don't think he is ready for that yet. He is ready to start trying more though. I think now that Emoni is graduating and growing up, he realizes how much he missed out on by allowing his grief to overcome him. Emoni is baking a loaf of bread during the scene, so their exchange of words and food serves as a sort of communion. It is the most intimate moment we get between Emoni and her father. It's also the most amount of reconciliation that's able to be had between them at the moment. He does eventually accept the food because he's trying to be more present, and she offers him the food in the first place because she's trying to be less resentful. They're meeting somewhere in the middle over slices of fresh baked bread. After the graduation ceremony, everyone gathers around Emoni for a group photo. Baby girl, Malachi, Angelica, Abuela, her homeroom teacher, her culinary teacher, even her father, and even Leslie. They all are forever immortalized in this moment. Emoni is surrounded by all of the people that help shape her into the woman that she is about to become. This part kind of reminded me of the most recent Bad Bunny album that I actually just listened to for the first time the day before I started reading this book. And he's Puerto Rican too, which I learned from his Tiny Desk concert. But it reminds me of that album because of all of the picture-taking sound motifs throughout, and also because of the cover art. I imagine that one of the chairs is for him and the other is for a friend or a family member, or just someone close to him that he wants to share a moment with. Emoni's graduation photo reminds me of that. And so what did Emoni end up doing after graduation? She did decide to go to Drexel's culinary arts program part-time, while also working for the chef from that cafe that complimented her work. Her and Malachi will be long distance, but they aren't too concerned about that. They're still taking their relationship one step at a time. And Emoni is finally going to visit Aunt Sarah and her mother's side of the family for the first time over the summer while Tyrone has baby girl. The book ends with the quote, "Today seems like a great day to begin." And I love that. Emoni is embarking on this new stage in her life, one she wasn't sure was possible for her at the beginning of the novel. That after some self-discovery and accepting lots of support from her community, she is finally able to pursue her dreams her way. And what a great example she'll be setting for her daughter as she grows older. This was such a sweet, comforting novel to read, which is a nice break from the gothic fiction genre we've been sticking to lately. I love it, but it can be kind of heavy sometimes. And as someone who enjoys cooking, the food elements were what initially attracted me to this story. I love how the author uses scenes in the kitchen as a means of Emoni's self-discovery and to deepen her connection with her family. I like the way the chapters are set up too. They aren't traditional, lengthy, numbered chapters. Instead, most of them are like 2 to 3 pages long, almost in a vignette style that captures Emoni's memories alongside current moments with other characters. I'm gonna have to make a ranking at the end of the year with all the books I've read. That's gonna be hard though because they've all been pretty great so far. If you've been reading along with me, let me know what you thought of With the Fire on High and where that sits amongst the others. Also, let me know if you picked up on anything from the book that I didn't talk about here. We can get that book club discussion started. And if you want to get a head start on the next book that I'll be reading, I believe it's going to be this one, Girl in Hyacinth Blue. It is about this professor who has this really old painting, and it sort of goes through the history of all of the hands that the painting has passed through and how that gives the painting meaning. So it's either going to be this book or one of the Heated Rivalry books, because I do plan on picking up, I think there's like 2 or 3 out now, but I do want to read those. Definitely. I'll probably do this one first and then Heated Rivalry, but I'll keep you posted if that changes. If you liked this video, you can like it and subscribe. This is mostly what I do over here, baking book club, some writing vlogs of my own novel journey, and sometimes we veer into discussions about fan fiction and indie authors as well. If you're into that, stick around. Thank you so much for watching though, and I will talk to you all soon. Goodbye.